Good evening, everyone. Hope you are okay. Uh, Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from today. My name is Mary Wangoi Mwangi, and I'll be your MC for the meeting today. Um, Hope you had a good day. For those who are at their afternoon, hope your day is going well. As we wait for the others to join so that we can start our webinar, how about you say hello on the chat bot and tell us where you're joining us from today? Yeah, and if you're up to it, you can unmute and say hello to us. Feel free.
Hey guys, my name is Fadili Teddy. Thank you, Angui, for this. I'm joining from, well, I'm in a traffic jam, so I really don't know where we are at. I'm joining from Nairobi, Kenya, and I really do appreciate you for being there. Instead, maybe I can just pass it to someone instead of us going random. Can pass it to Felix. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Fadili. So, Felix, take it, take it from Fadili and tell us where you're joining us from, how your day has been. We want to hear from you guys.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Felix Mwendwa. I am doing okay. The day has been well, a little bit exhausting, but the day has been fine. I am joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, and looking forward to the conversations we're going to have today. Thank you. Maybe
Thanks
I can pass it to maybe let's see. Let's pass it to Emmanuel.
To be able to implement it out here in the real world so that when the time comes, you won't be new to it. You'll have gained experience having dealt it hands-on and gotten exposure. So in a nutshell, that is how that is what GBD does. And as the meeting continues, we will drop in our social media handles on the chat box so that everyone joining us today can get a chance to interact with us on our handles and also get to join our WhatsApp channel so that you get to know, so that let this be the beginning of you building a relationship to us. And our founder is Caroline. I don't know if she's in the call, but she's our founder. You will interact with her hopefully before the webinar ends. But for now, that is what you have to. That is what I have from this side, and some housekeeping rules before the meeting starts. Feel free during as the webinar continues and you feel you have a question, or I know you came prepared with questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat box. If there is that one which is burning you and you feel that if you let time go, you might forget it, feel free to drop it in the chat box as the webinar continues. But don't worry, we will have a Q&A session after our panelists. After our panel, we'll have a Q&A session. And another thing, as we ask our question and interact in the chat box, let's maintain respect. Above said, we are different people joining us from different places. Let us be respectful of each other. The language we use, let it be respectful language. How you would want me to address you, address me. Anything else that I've left out? I don't think so. But say hello in the chat box as we wait for our panelists to join in the call. Felix, kindly confirm if our panelists have arrived, kindly. Felix, or is it Mark?
Okay, just a second.
Okay, I'm seeing a few people from other countries apart from Kenya. If you're not from Kenya, this is your time to shine. Say hello to us as we wait for Felix to confirm if our panelists have arrived. Anyone not from Kenya, you just unmute, say hello.
Yeah, hello. Hello, can
That
you
is
hear me?
yes, we can, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, nice to have you around. My name is Mr. Christian Jibo. I'm from Nigeria, but currently in Cameroon. It's fortunate that Global Reach Diplomacy is one of our partner. You know, sometimes we do our activities program together. So it's a pleasure to join young diplomat, aspiring diplomat, to be part of this exciting event. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Felix, confirm if all is good so that we can begin our webinar.
Yes, I think all is well. I can see them on the call.
That is nice. I invite you to do the keynote speech so that we proceed from there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Like you've heard, my name is Felix Mwendwa. I'm part of the GBD team. One of the researchers. I'll be giving us the keynote speech for today before we start as we start our conversations. So today we are talking about xenophobia, and xenophobia doesn't start with violence. It starts with a whisper. The whispers being they're taking our jobs, they don't belong here, they're different from us, and so on. A good example being just recently in our country, Kenya, we've been hearing whispers here and there of foreigners taking the small jobs here around our country, which is that is how xenophobia starts. By the time that whisper becomes a riot or a deportation or a hateful policy, it's already too late. So the question we need to ask ourselves today is, how do we stop this whisper? And today's webinar, we are going to focus on three things, that is power, compromise, and diplomacy. So starting with power, power isn't just governments and police. Power is the employer who decides to hire. Power is the teacher in a classroom. Power is the influencer with 2 million followers. Power is you, who is in this webinar today. Xenophobia thrives where there is a power vacuum. When leaders stay silent, when institutions look away, when ordinary people choose not to speak up, that silence becomes permission. But power used correctly does three things. Number one, what it does is it creates protection. Laws and policy must protect migrants, refugees, and minorities. Without enforcement, rights are just words. The second thing power, when used correctly, does is it creates representation. Put migrant voices in the rooms where decisions are made. You can't address xenophobia about people without people from those communities at the table. And the third thing power does when it's used correctly is a narrative setting. Power decides the story we tell. Do we tell the story of the foreigner who committed a crime, or the story of thousands of foreigners who are doctors, entrepreneurs, neighbors, and taxpayers. Power without values becomes oppression, and power with values becomes leadership. The second thing we are gonna be focusing on our webinar today is compromise. One thing I know about this word compromise, at the end of the day, this word sometimes it feels like losing. But xenophobia is often born from real fears. That is fear of job loss, fear of cultural change, fear of scarcity. And we can't just shout, stop being xenophobic and expect it to work. We have to address that fear. Compromise means saying, yes, we need to protect local jobs and we need migrant labor in sectors we are short on. Compromise also means saying, yes, we need to preserve our culture and we need to make space for new cultures to add to it. It also says, yes, resources are limited and we can plan better so no one of us is left behind. Compromise is not weakness. It's the art of finding a solution where both sides feel heard, even if neither gets everything. Without compromise, we get polarization, and polarization is the fuel for xenophobia. The third thing we're going to be focusing on our webinar today is diplomacy. Diplomacy is not just for ambassadors in suits. Diplomacy is how we talk to each other when we disagree. Xenophobia grows in echo chambers, and diplomacy breaks that echo chamber. Diplomacy is the community dialogue between the long-time residents and new arrivals. Diplomacy is also the journalist choosing to humanize, not sensationalize.
Undermining the peace and social cohesions of our different countries. But again, ladies and gentlemen, we just get to get general thoughts on whether this is actually something Africans should be turning their eyes on and whether it is actually a problem. And on our panel today, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by an amazing South African who is a political scientist and international relations graduate with an academic background in psychology and development studies. Her interests are in diplomacy, migration, governance, public policy, human rights, and social cohesion. She'll be here today to answer for us. Give us a picture on what does inclusive governance look like, what does peaceful coexistence look like, and how does this contribute to sustainable development in Africa. And joining us all the way from South Africa is the amazing Miss Stevonai Steenkamp. Miss Stevonai, if you're on the call, I'd love to hear from you. If you can hear me, please introduce yourself. We'd love to hear from you. All right, as we wait for her to join in, we have Miss Brenda Keya as well, a diplomatic practitioner with a strong passion for advancing dialogue through public diplomacy and track initiatives. She's the founder of Aligned Voices Africa, and that's a platform dedicated to fostering informal channels for international dialogue and promoting collaboration across communities and borders. Brenda is committed to building understanding through diplomacy and believes that meaningful conversations are essential to addressing today's global challenges. And the global challenge we're here to answer today is that of xenophobia. Miss Brenda, are you on the call?
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the panel. Thank you so much. Now, finally, on our panel, we have a diplomat who is Mr. Taiwo Julius Sanusi, the Global Executive Director of the Africa Young Diplomats Forum, an experienced diplomat and a committed Pan-Africanist who has dedicated his career to empowering young leaders and strengthening diplomacy across the continent. Through his work, he champions regional cooperation, youth engagement, and international collaborations as key drivers of Africa's development and global influence. Diplomat Taiwo, if you can hear me, we'd love to hear your voice. Kindly say hi.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, everybody. Diplomatic greetings.
a pleasure to have you on the call. Just to kick us off on our conversation, Miss Brenda, we've been hearing a lot of rumors, perhaps, rooting from the fact that there's xenophobia in Kenya, there's xenophobia in South Africa. We'd just like you to paint for us a picture of why you think this occurs and what it looks like from a diplomatic standpoint in terms of saying South Africa and Ghana are now at crossroads, what's the way forward? But we just love to start from the get-go of understanding what is xenophobia and how does it look like in this context. Brenda?
Well, thank you so much, Sarabel. Good evening, and good evening to you all, and to all my esteemed colleagues. Well, thank you for that question. Well, I am an alignment and expression strategist, and I specialize in multilateral diplomacy and looking at the diverse sectors that are represented in this room tonight. I can see we have from business to health, diplomacy, international relations. It just proves that what we're discussing tonight is not really a political problem, it's an operational one. And I would like to look at that from the lens of the systems, because we have seen how xenophobia has been defined as hatred, but looking at it, it has layers of competing interests. We're looking at economic insecurity, we're looking at political rhetoric, we're looking at historical grievances, and a lot of identity politics as well. There is a lot of misinformation that comes with it. And this also just points to weak governance, and all these are competing over opportunities. And this is exactly where diplomacy comes in, to seek to manage all these competing interests peacefully. And while you can look at xenophobia as hostility, perhaps, or hatred towards a foreigner or a stranger, it's actually a symptom of a lot that is underlying. And that's why in diplomacy, in practice, today we must begin to ask a different question. What are these conditions that are allowing fear? Because if you look at xenophobia, the root word is actually fear and stranger. So that means this whole thing is riding on fear, and it's backed by anxiety, So what makes it become something that is weaponized or more influential than the prevailing truths or the prevailing facts? Because it's not emerging in isolation. And we will look at those specific examples that we have seen, which in turn have sparked such dialogues as this that we're having, because it has grown from where there has been economic anxiety. Look at South Africa, and we will see even in Kenya we have different scenarios. There is a lot of political uncertainty. We're just about to get into elections. It's pointing to a weak institutional trust. There is a lot of unresolved historical tensions. And within these environments, migrants or foreign communities, they have now become, perceived symbols or sources of frustrations across sectors. And the more reason why diplomacy matters in these situations, because the role of diplomacy is not just to ease those the tensions or the frustrations after conflicts have erupted. No. We have had, in Kenya, we have had a lot of, we call it the post-election violence, where were it not for the intervention of diplomats, things could have been worse or different. But right now, we must seek to build systems of dialogue before fear is weaponized, before fear becomes policy. And this kind of fear that is in xenophobia is the fear that causes those people or the citizens to feel like the strangers have come to invade, to deprive, or to take from them, and so they charge at them. And so from my perspective, I think for sustainable solutions, we require to align all these interests, not to undermine any of these concerns that the citizens have. There has to be some shared responsibility to uphold human dignity, because there is no bad immigrant or a good immigrant. There's just immigrants, and these are people. And we know that people can behave badly. And if people can behave badly, they can also behave well. And that is why we have the law, we have government, we have structures, we have policies. You see, all these objectives, they're not exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive, we must pursue both of them, because it begins from the microsystems where you and I exist today, from this dialogue, from this conversation, all the way up into the national structures.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Pleasure to be hearing from you. Open for us the floor. Indeed, there's no good foreigner, there's no bad foreigner. And we'd like to hear from you, Diplomat Taiwo. When you talk about Pan-Africanism, what does an Africa that's free from xenophobia look like to you, and how can we as the youth contribute to building it?
All right. Good afternoon, good evening once again, and thank you very much for having me. I remember yesterday when we were having a catch-up meeting, I said something that xenophobia is actually an emotional situation, circumstances, and issue for me. And for me, as a diplomat, I believe this is not supposed to be happening in our continent. We don't have to be xenophobic to one another. When we look at our origin and who we claim that we are African, then we should be looking at interrelated hegemony of where we came from, how we came to be, and how countries within the continent of Africa has been there to support and to help one another in the time of problems and struggles. Now, for me, why do we need to be hostile and xenophobic against one another? Knowing fully well that we are from the same mother, knowing fully well that we share the same cultural affinity, we are from the same streams, and we could not bear one another to live in peace. I can tell you something, that people that are xenophobic in nature, they are the people that I can refer to be the lazy people. People migrate from the time immemorial. If you go to historical hegemony of Africa, migration didn't just start from now, right? It has been from time immemorial. And you can see that researchers, people that have been our fathers, these people that we can refer to as the people that we look up to in our continent, they move from one place to another. They've lived in one region, Sweden, countries. They've settled in other parts that is outside their countries of origin. And they've been able to contribute towards the development, the financial stability, the growth, and the sustainable development of that country. And it is only those who can be tagged to be lazy are the one that usually come up with the phrase and the word xenophobia to attack other people that have come from other places to settle down in where they feel they can find peace. And what comes out of it is that these ones will be attacked. They will be given different kind of names. Names like, oh, you have come to take our job. You have come to take our women. You have come to take our homes. You have come to do this. You have come to do that. But they have forgotten that these same people, they are one way or the other contributing towards the developmental growth, economic stability, and sustainable control of this country. Now, I want to be diplomatic in my explanation, and I will be taking us through one or two definitions. What exactly is diplomacy? Diplomacy has been defined, by Sir Ernest Sato. It can be referred to as father of diplomacy, as the right application of intelligence and tact to the conduct of official relations between the government of independent states. I said that the topic before us is emotional. And if I'm permitted to speak from the recent incident of what brought about the volume of the maltreatment of other nationals in the country of South Africa. If I'm permitted to go through this route, you will discover that we are not learning from our past lessons. We are not showing experience as African. We are not coming from the same root of what binds us together to be known, to be referred, and to be seen as Africa. Why do we need to hate one another? Why do we need to fear and live in a world where we see ourselves as family? Why are we being xenophobic towards our brothers and sisters? Africa is a very special and peculiar continent. And we must understand that in today's international relations and politics, Africa as a continent cannot be pushed aside when it comes to influence. And we are spread about across different parts of the world. For example, I am in Nigeria, but I live in the United Kingdom. I work, I pay my tax, education wise, I contributed to the economy. And at the end of the day, somebody will tell me that I don't belong to that society. How? We should, let me come back home as African. We should also remember what we share together from the same source, from the same blood, from the same water. We should remember what other African country has done to contribute towards the stability of the other countries. But today, we forget so soon that we should be our brother's keeper. Today, we forget so soon that we do not have to be xenophobic to ourselves. Today, try to bring power to play and to override the place of diplomacy. And we go after ourselves. We attack one another. We set people off from what they have worked for over the years and rendering them to become less. Why are we being xenophobic and we claim to be one Africa? Why are we xenophobic when we are trying to achieve Agenda 2063, the Africa we want? Our compromise and diplomacy. When we bring these three powerful tools together to address xenophobia as an African, in the case of what is happening today around the world, you will see that those that are caused xenophobic or that are using the term xenophobia, they are the people that have been tagged as the irritational. They have irritational fears. They have hatred. They have this seated prejudice towards people that they perceive to be foreigners or strangers. How can I call myself African and you are tagging me to be a stranger in the same continent that we are trying to build to share one affinity germony together? Why are we hating towards one another? Why are we exhibiting and attacking one another through the word of fears to fellow Africans? The rise of xenophobia in South Africa is deeply rooted in the issue that has been in existence for a long time. Now, it is not only about South Africa, but why we are using this as a case study is because of the current happenings. What has actually erupted into the public space. God has made other people to begin to exercise fear and lose confidence in our fellow African country. The rise of xenophobia didn't just start now, we know. It has even affected several diplomatic relations between the country where it became so loud vis-a-vis other countries within the African continent. We've also forgotten the national interest of the founders that created Africa. Why have we neglected the Agenda 2063 of the Africa we want that could bring Africa to live together as one big family, to remove the barriers between the movement of goods and services? Why are we using power that we are not meant to use for ourselves against what we are supposed to be doing? Why do we forget so soon where we are coming from? Why do we forget so soon the blood that we share together as brothers? Why are we allowing our personal interests to override national interests? Like I said, it's an emotional issue for me. Very, very emotional. And if I remember, the great fathers of Africa, even directly from South Africa, Nelson Mandela, is a man of diplomatic understanding. The regime in South Africa, when he was released, he said something very critical. And what did he say? He said that if an individualistic interest collide and coincide with that of the national interest, it should be found suitable to embrace and to work on. And he says, to work Africa is what we need in order for us to live together as brothers and as sisters, not forgetting where we are coming from. Why are we allowing xenophobic to destroy what we share together as Africa? Why do we forget so soon? The vehicle of trust is operation. The love that exists between us. Are we exhibiting fears? Why do we hate one another? What exactly do we derive or are we getting or driving home from exhibiting hatred to one another? I overheard some people saying that, oh, they have come to take our job. They have come to take our women. They have come to take our land. If you are not exhibiting fears and laziness, there is nothing wrong in people migrating and moving from one place to another to settle. And the moment they understand that they can do something that will help them to enjoy stability, there is nothing stopping you to embrace one another as one big family. Let me drive home. Africa, we need to arise to our responsibility. The youth, we need to arise from our sleeping mats that are pushing for hatred and disorganization of the blood that we share together. We need to live our primitive life and embrace the reality of loving one another. We need to responsibility to support one another rather than to displace one another. Some people seize this opportunity as an avenue to take other people's wealth, sweat, and nest what they have worked for in the name of claiming land that is a free gift of nature. Brothers and sisters, fellow youth, I want to tell you that one thing that we should not forget is that diplomacy has really helped nations to be able to suppress the ability of engaging in wars and gunshots and all kind of activities that could cause disorganization. Youth, you need to begin to drive home that reorganization, the reorientation of a new ideas and of the citizens. You need to begin to think out of the box. You need to begin to embrace opportunities rather than causing problems and see your fellow brothers as enemy. It doesn't end here. No nation is an island. In international relations, we say every nation lives in interdependent and relation of one another. if a state has the capacity to live on our own, then there will not be need for diplomatic relation to come alive. Folks, friends, we need to put an end to xenophobic. We need to suppress the fear, the hatred, and the irritation that we've got towards one another. We need to show the true blood of Africa. We need to learn from our past leaders. We need to learn from the life of the Kuma, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the life of our leaders that have laid their life to build Africa over the years with their blood, with their sweat, with their power. We need to remember the population that has gone down in place for Africa to begin to take its place and the international system. We need to stop being xenophobic to one another. It's not going to help us. Many of us, we are traumatized with what has just happened in Africa by seeing our fellow African brothers and sisters to the streets of South Africa, chasing out people. I am very, very traumatized seeing that happening. I am highly emotional as a diplomat. Forgetting when South Africa was in problems, these same brothers, fellow country people that are sent away, they stood their ground and fought against the apartheid government. But today, you forget so soon. I am not saying it's only happening in South Africa. It's happening everywhere around the world. But it's a shame that the people and the youth, they could echo it in a way that the world is now seeing us to be divided instead of to be one. Let me just stop here and tell us that what we need to be doing at this time is to embrace peace, love, and to continue to live in the oneness of being one Africa. Together, we can build Agenda 2063 through diplomacy with one voice, with one mind. I rest my case here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Diplomat Taiwo. Can hear the passion in your voice, can hear the anger in your voice, can hear the resolutions in your voice, and it's been a pleasure listening to you. Now, to just turn our thoughts to the aspect of compromise in times of tension, and we'd love to hear from you, Ms. Stevonai. In these moments of heightened social tension, the governments are trying to balance between the national interests, the public concerns, what are the people saying, what will other people say. We just love you to tell us, where does compromise begin? Where does it end? And how does it become non-negotiable? Ms. Stevonai, if you're on the call. Ms. Stevonai, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. All right, we are going to direct the question to Miss Brenda. Miss Brenda, if you're still on the call, we'd just love to hear your thoughts on the aspect of compromise. We'd love to know, should the government compromise for their people? Should they work against their people? And what does this look like in terms of diplomatic negotiations? Miss Brenda, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I completely agree with the complexity of the matter as can you hear me?
Yes, Miss Brenda, we can hear you.
Hello. Can people hear me? Because I'm having technical difficulties.
Hi, yes, Mr. Stevonai, we can hear you. I think we'd just love to hear from you, and then we'll hear from you, Miss Brenda, as well. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I do apologize for the technical difficulties I've been facing. So yes, I'm joining in from South Africa. Very emotional night. Some people's tensions are quite high, and it's okay. It's understandable. But good evening, everyone, and thank you to Global Bridge Diplomacy for convening this important conversation. Very much needed dialogue. So it's an honor to join fellow panelists and participants from across the continent and beyond. My name is Stevonai Steenkamp, and I join you from South Africa. Um, I really, it's emotional for me too, I must say, to my fellow colleagues. When we discuss xenophobia, I believe we must begin by asking a fundamental question: what problem are we trying to solve? Right. So, I really come from a standpoint of Pan Africanism. I believe in that ideology so much that I am African for Africans. And to answer your question, Ms. Sarabal, because now I do not want to start from the beginning as with time, you talked about compromise. And hello? Can people hear me? Because why is this?
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Yes, compromise often sounds like a dirty word in politics. People think compromise means giving up on your principles, abandoning what you believe in, but it's not what it means at all. So what do I mean by compromise? So compromise means finding practical solutions that balance legitimate concerns. So it does not mean abandoning human rights. It does not mean abandoning our constitutional values. It means acknowledging that different interests exist and finding a way for them to coexist. Right? So we've been talking about South Africa quite a lot because South Africa has been in the hot seat. I understand, but let me give you a practical example from South Africa. South Africans are genuinely frustrated. I cannot emphasize this enough. Our unemployment rate stands at 32.7%. Employment fell by 355,000 in the first quarter of this year alone. So that leaves us with 8 million people out of work. Local services like water, refuse collections, hospitals, clinics remain unreliable in very, a lot of communities where people feel those failures most personally and quite deeply. So when people say foreigners are taking our jobs, what are they really saying? They are saying that I cannot find a job. They are saying that government has failed me. They are saying that I am desperate. And those feelings are real. They are earned. The anger on the streets is not manufactured. It's quite real. But here's the crucial part, right? The problem is where the anger is being directed to. And it's false xenophobia. Like, we know that xenophobia is fear, prejudice. It's, this hostility towards individuals that are different or rather foreign. That's where they direct their anger to. So the research shows that immigrants actually contribute positively to South Africa's economy. They do not reduce employment rates for South African citizens. In fact, World Bank research found that one immigrant worker generated approximately, I think, 2 jobs for South African citizens. So compromise in this context means, yes, acknowledge genuine grievances, but also acknowledge the facts and then find solutions. So what could solutions look like here in South Africa? Well, the Department of Home Affairs needs to fix our own house. So we have domestic issues that we need to fix, really. We need to be brutally honest. Immigration officials are accepting bribes to process fraudulent permits. Soldiers are deployed along the borders, are involved in corruption, accepting bribes to give illegal foreigners access. Border fences are not strong enough to prevent illegal crossing, right? So Parliament's own investigations led to about 285 arrests, including 123 Home Affairs officials, 84 syndicate members, and about 8 police members. So when we talk about compromise, we must include this. South Africa must fix its own institutional failures. No country can claim a moral high ground on immigration enforcement while its own institutions are compromised. So compromise means we enforce immigration laws, but we enforce them legally through the state, not through mobs. It means we acknowledge citizens' frustrations, but we address the root causes, which are economic and institutional. It's more economic and institutional, not forward, right? So it means that we must protect human rights, but we must also enforce the law fairly. The HRC has called for political and community leaders to address legitimate socioeconomic grievances without allowing immigrants to become scapegoats for deeper structural failures in the society. So what that is compromise.
Thank you so much, Miss Stevonai. I think we're gonna go over to Brenda now. And I'm gonna change the question now that we've talked a bit about what compromise actually looks like. And Brenda, you have a bit of experience in working diplomacy and government, but the question that we, the young people, are currently asking is diplomacy has moved from embassy and state action. What role can we as the young people come in and play to reduce xenophobia and build social cohesion in our countries, in our continent, in our various spaces? Brenda, over to you.
Thank you, Sorabel. Audible right now enough? You can hear me?
Yes, very audible, thank you.
Great. Let me just say this. When we step into the rooms to actually solve these problems behind closed doors, then we'll be looking at the levels of power, what controls the human behavior, because these things are deeper than just what we are looking at from where we stand. And as you have said in my work, even across the corporate spaces, we look at this from three perspectives. Number one, how do we respect governance and security without compromising human dignity? Remember, an immigrant is a human being first and foremost. And how do we get these competing stakeholders to negotiate rather than to talk past one another? And then the narrative around it. How are we establishing this information dominance before even the fear fills the vacuum? Well, that was touching on the compromise aspect. Why? Because sovereignty is the foundation of international order. Every government has a right to protect its citizens within its borders. So, having that legal mandate to protect your citizens, to govern your borders, in multilateral diplomacy, the reason why we are having these dialogues and conversations, sovereignty, there has to be an alignment aspect to create that interdependence. Because the work of diplomats and diplomacy is not just asking nations to abandon their sovereignty. No, we have to design frameworks where we have border securities, we have human dignities upheld, and the ability to embrace this legally, the immigrants or the people coming into your nation legally. We have the Ministry of Home Affairs or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, respective ministries that are charged with responsibility to look into immigration. There are laws and policies around it. And when conflict escalates, it's because key sectors are not aligning. Where government is focusing on security, yes. We have corporate sectors are focusing on labor mobility. We've seen in South Africa, they are talking of, job security and lack of jobs, like we have heard. And civil societies, they are focusing on rights, human rights. Then we have these local communities here who are focusing on a lot of things, including service delivery, but none of them are actually talking with one another to negotiate, to find a balance. All these interests are very legitimate, and we cannot downplay their concerns. And so, with diplomacy, there has to be an active process to bring all these issues into some single strategic consensus. And that is where each one and every one of us comes in. And because we have often focused on the official diplomacy between governments, where scholars, the official people appointed by government are put into places and sent over to discuss, mediate, negotiate, and all that. Yet, some of the most meaningful breakthroughs, if I may call them that way, have occurred through these informal and official dialogues, which are hosted by institutions, think tanks, like what we're doing today. This is an informal discussion. And these spaces allow difficult conversations to happen away from political pressures and the media scrutiny. So building relationships that make formal agreements possible like this is where the young people need to begin. Across Africa, for example, our economies, our cultures, our families, they have extended beyond borders. We have different tribes, we have different people living within certain borders. For example, we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have the African Union, which has Agenda 2063, like Diplomat Taiwo said. They envision greater integration in the future. When does the future come? The future is here now. If we cannot do it right now, we can't talk of Agenda 2063. We can't talk of the free trade area. How is African Continental Free Trade Area possible? Integration cannot succeed until we have built this public trust and social cohesion, and diplomacy has to operate not just between states, but among communities, among the microsystems within your space, as a social media influencer, as a content creator, as a student of international relations, as, in whatever profession you are in. And let me just take you aback for 1 minute, because we must learn from historical precedents across our continent. Perhaps we are talking of South Africa today because it's blown out and it's here today that we are looking at it from this perspective. But remember, because I know we are students of history as well, and as researchers and diplomats, you must look at what has happened before. Looking at, for example, Nigeria, there was a time in history tells us they also had a similar thing. And there was this influx of immigrants that had come for employment because Nigeria was really booming in, they had this oil thing with, wherever. And during that time, the oil recession, the state was blaming the Ghanaians. Actually, those are just their neighbors there. They blamed them for unemployment, and the president expelled them from their nation. Over 100 million, they went away. But did that change the Nigerian economy? No, because those immigrants were not the cause of recession. They were just the scapegoats, filling crucial roles in education, in construction, in the oil industry, and all that. So let me ask you, who should have the power to decide who belongs? The armed crowd, the mob, institutions? Who should? Because the moment power shifts from the lawful institutions to all the angry mobs and everyone else who feels like they have a stranger within their community, then fear will replace justice. And that is why precisely diplomacy comes in. The rule of law, accountable governance. We must work together. And allow me to leave you with this. We cannot build Africa that is envisioned under Agenda 2063, if our borders are just going to be remain barriers of suspicion, they should be bridges of cooperation. Bridges of cooperation, where whether you manage cross-border migration, leading institutions as a student or as a young entrepreneur across East Africa, across Africa, you've got to navigate this friction, but the principle has to remain. We can condemn, yes. We can be all this and all that, but the problem is xenophobia is a symptom of a lot of underlying structural issues that must be dealt with. It's not a migration challenge, it's a leadership challenge. And it's testing our institutions. Can they balance security with dignity? Can national interests with regional cooperation and power, can they be managed responsibly? And diplomacy for us, we are reminded that lasting peace is rarely achieved through winning an argument. You see, right now, perhaps the South African human rights societies or those championing for this feel they may have won, yes, but at what cost? At what cost? You see, perhaps those people that went away, about 53,000 people already out of the country, have they created any meaningful opportunities for the natives now? Have they? Are there opportunities that have come up as a result of their exit? Peace here will only be achieved by us creating these conditions in which everyone can pursue their legitimate interests without seeing one another as a threat. And if we are serious about addressing this issue, then we have to invest not just in stronger policies, we have to look at stronger relationships, better dialogues, more inclusive leadership. I'm just wondering, what if those immigrants retaliated? What if they chose to protect themselves? It could have, escalated into something really bad. And diplomacy for us is not just managing those conflicts. It's about finding that trust to prevent the conflicts from taking root. So when citizens are taking the law into their own hands, they are undermining that very rule of law that they seek to defend. It is just as illegal for them to take the law into their hands. Why couldn't they have gone to the Ministry of Affairs or the government agency responsible? Who is responsible for admitting people into their borders? Their agencies that are charged with such responsibilities. So respect for the law must apply to everyone. And that is where protection for the human dignity is. So there is the formal power, the sovereignty of the nation cannot be compromised. But there is now the alignment that brings us into a relational power, where now we come into some discussion to bring out a certain narrative. This narrative should be able to bring us to a point where we understand that it's not about the stranger who is within our borders. It's about the system or the structure or the agency. Government, in a layman's understanding, is just meant to organize society so that there is equitable distribution of resources. So if the government is failing at its basic responsibility, then that's not to say that the citizens should take this into their hands. No. If I assault someone because I believe they're in my country legally, then I have committed a crime myself. Government has a responsibility to protect even the criminal until they are brought to justice. One illegal act cannot justify another. And that's why the rule of law exists precisely just to prevent society from getting into the mob. And we have seen this happening even across the world. Look at what happened in Germany, what happened in Yugoslavia, what is even happening in Israel and Palestine. Same story. So for us, some of us even some are calling it Afrophobia because they think it's an African issue. No, this is about human behavior and the failed systems, failed structures, and failed government, all that. Diplomacy is not only about relationships between nations. We have to strengthen institutions right from the microsystems, from you and I, from the young people. We are in the digital era, and in this space, you can change so much. And you begin from your space where you are, whether a digital space or a physical space. You have a community, you have these people that listen to you, your voice matters. All this will culminate into some macro system that will now gel into the national structures that will help us now come up with for example, at the end of this conversation, if you do those issue groups, when they get into government spaces or government structures and institutions, they are shaping narratives that can be depended upon, and that you can be charged with the responsibility to even implement or execute, even with the help of the government. So where you are, you play a very important role because you have to look at this from a responsibility point of view, an accountability point of view, where it has to stop with you and not be propagated by you.
Wow, thank you so much, Miss Brenda. I think you point us in a very interesting direction where we redirect our minds from the actual question of is it legal, is it illegal, to understanding that two illegal qualities cannot make one right. And I'm going to open the floor now for questions. If you have a question, you can feel free to drop it in the chat, but also feel free to put up your hand and ask our panelists your questions directly. If you came here with a question and your question has not been answered, this is your time, as Wangui says, to shine. Please feel free to put up your hand and ask your question. I'm not seeing any hands. If you want, you can also unmute. No questions from our members. All right, I think I'm seeing something from Felix in the chat, and he's saying, we have talked about fear and anxiety as well as weak institutional trust. I am just thinking to myself, how is this native supposed to compromise, considering these foreigners came with their own capital as well as certificates similar to the ones the natives have? They end up getting the jobs, they end up starting the businesses. To some level, the native will feel like they have lost, right? How do we tap into compromise here, considering both the native and the foreigner have the same qualifications and so on, but the foreigner gets the priority? To unpack this, I'm going to shoot this question over to Miss Stevonai, if you can hear us.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I did say that I am going to talk from the standpoint of the ideology of Pan-Africanism. Right, so I want us to move to the part where it's kind of my final pillar. It's also going to answer the question. So Pan-Africanism for me is both political principle and personal conviction. It's the belief that African unity matters, that our futures are deeply interconnected. But let me be clear by what I mean. Pan-Africanism should not require us to ignore national sovereignty. Every country has a right to regulate its borders and to enforce its immigration laws. That's not dispute. But equally, national sovereignty should never require us to abandon our shared humanity. We are neighbors, we are fellow Africans, and the problems we face, like unemployment, inequality, corruption, poor governance, are not problems that can be solved by closed borders. I want to give you a practical example of what I mean. The African Union Agenda 2063 envisions an integrated continent collectively united and based on the ideals of Africa's resonance. One of the key projects is the Protocol on Free Movement of Persons adopted in January 2018. This protocol aims to progressively implement the right of entry, the right of residence, and the right of establishment. But here's the reality check. Only 4 countries on our continent have ratified this protocol, like Rwanda, Niger, Mali. 32 countries have signed, but not ratified. So this protocol requires 15 ratifications to come into force. South Africans usually talk about them having to carry the continent on their backs. We all have a responsibility. If we want to make this ideology come to life, we all have a part to play. So it tells us that African countries are reluctant to embrace these movements, even while paying lip service to Pan-African unity. Why? Because immigration is politically sensitive. Concerns over sovereignty, border management, and security heighten political risk, and in some cases, fuel the anti-immigrant sentiment. So South Africa is not alone in this tension. Every country struggles with it. But Pan-Africanism calls us to do more than just acknowledge the struggle. It calls us to cooperate, to solve common challenges together, to improve our labor mobility, to strengthen regional institutions, and to address the root causes that compel migration. So let me address this directly. I know that other African countries look at South Africa right now and think, you're being cruel, you're turning away our brothers and sisters, and it really does look like that, and it's quite sad. And I understand that perception, I really do. But also, I want to be honest with you, every country has laws and rules that must be followed. South Africa has failed in this enforcement, sometimes through corruption, sometimes through incompetence. And that failure has created problems for South Africans, yes, but also for immigrants themselves. People who become exploited by employers, criminal syndicates when they are undocumented. Right? So usually you find South Africa, illegal immigrants come over, they cross the border through bribery. They are being exploited by cheap labor, right? So they are being paid correctly, like most of us should be getting paid. So now they're being exploited, and at the end of the day, they should also be treated like citizens. So if you cross the border within the rules and the regulations of the country, we can all sort of work towards one common goal. So Pan-Africanism for me is about open borders without, it's not about open borders without rules, it's about cooperation, it's about regional frameworks, it's about addressing the root causes of migration, like poverty, conflict, and lack of opportunity. It is about creating systems that work for everybody, every single one that crosses over, that comes into our country. So what South Africa is doing right now is, I want to address what our government is currently doing, because we need to be fair and acknowledge both the challenges and the efforts being made. President Ramaphosa addressed the nation and outlined 5 pillars, a 5-pillar plan. Let me explain each pillar plan. So pillar 1 is cracking down on law violations, right? So the Department of Home Affairs, the Border Management Control, and the police are intensifying efforts to identify and deport undocumented foreign nationals. In the past alone, I think about over 450,000 people attempting to enter South Africa illegally. So let me put that number into perspective. That is almost 500,000 people stopped at our border. So the state is doing something. The question is whether it is enough, right? So we're not saying you're not welcome, our brothers and sisters are not welcome. We're trying to enforce our law, our constitutional values, but allowing our brothers and sisters to come in, however, through the correct ways and the correct channel. And we need to fix that domestically. We need to fix that at home. We are really fighting an issue at home with our government. We have systemic failure. right? Pillar two, for instance, is securing the borders. The president said something like, I agree with securing the borders are not a sign of hostility towards other countries. They are just a fundamental requirement of a sovereign and well-governed state. What does this mean practically? The government is investing in modern technology, infrastructure, and personnel to secure borders while facilitating legitimate trade and travel. They're also planning a phased relocation of refugee reception centers to border posts, starting with right now I'm in Pretoria, so starting with the Taiwo Center this year. The third pillar is rooting out corruption, which is our biggest problem. This pillar that matters the most to me because it goes to the heart of the very problem. The president acknowledged something like South Africans have known for a long time. Illegal immigration is often enabled by corruption. I want to quote him directly. Officials who sell documents, facilitate unlawful entry, abuse public office for personal gain, betray the trust of the South African people. So it is important that we acknowledge the problem. It's not that foreigners are breaking the law. The problem is South Africans are breaking the law. Officials who take bribes, who facilitate illegal entry, who protest fraudulent permits. So the government is also moving towards discontinuing the ID Green Book, which has been happening, and that has been described as a vulnerability to identity theft. This will close the space for undocumented immigrants and criminal syndicates. So, hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, and the final pillar, which is pillar 5, is cooperation with other countries. So that South Africa will continue working with other African countries to build an Africa in which people move by choice, not desperation. The president has committed to sending envoys to other African countries to explain the measures being taken. So the government is doing something towards what's happening currently. And I must say that I can see some sort of change taking place in our country right now. But the problem is power. I think one of our panelists mentioned that who has the power? Who constitutes the power? Now, what do I mean by this? Because power has the ability to influence public perception, to shape what people believe, and to direct their anger or hold. Power is carried by political leaders, by the media, by social media influencers, by political parties. So we all know what's been happening in South Africa, the March and March movement, massive protests have been taking place across the country. I think in 120 locations nationwide, over 900 people have been arrested, at least 4 have been killed. Approximately 25,000 immigrants from other African nations have already fled South Africa out of fear because their safety. So where does this March and March movement come from? It did not emerge in a vacuum. Right? It can be described as something I would call political opportunism. We are at a very, very crucial time, election. So people with the capital to do political mobilization moving towards upcoming local government elections. So think about it, the movement has vowed to march every Thursday for the next 6 months. That timeline takes us directly to November 2026 when the local government elections are taking place here. So why am I saying this? Genuine grievances are being exploited. People are genuinely frustrated about employment, about failing services, about corruption, and then political actors come along and say, look, it's the foreigners' fault. So power is being used to divide rather than to unite.
Heartfelt thoughts, Ms. Stevonai, around power and the general question on who has the power to inform all these decisions in the first place. And Miss Brenda was pointing us towards the general thinking on understanding what goes on in a citizen's mind when they go out to the streets and they start saying, we don't want these people here. And of course, Diplomat Taiwo with passionate Pan-African spirit asking us the questions, why do we hate each other so much? And ladies and gentlemen, I think there's a question from Christinette. Please go ahead. I'm not sure whether that's a hand that's up by mistake, but we are out of time as well. And because this is a conversation that we cannot sum up in 1 hour, 30 minutes, we are going to, of course, bring you a second roundup of the same conversation, just so we can talk about the eventualities of xenophobia across Africa. Remember that it is a choice. And if it's a choice, then inclusion, dialogue, and solidarity can always be choices that we can also opt for. Christinette, your hand is up.
Yes.
Sure,
Yes. Am I audible?
yes, you are.
Oh, okay. It's actually not Christina, but it's Moshi. So this Africa 2063, given the sovereignty issues of African countries, and really talking from a Pan-African perspective, I mean, I'm personally a Pan-Africanist. Is it just a pipe dream? I mean, how do we navigate towards really achieving the Africa we want, given the challenges, immense challenges, not only in South Africa, but all over the continent? And anybody can answer that question. But is it just a pipe dream? Is what I'm asking. Or is it something that's tangible, to which we can migrate towards? And what practical steps do we take, or do countries take, to move in that direction, given the challenges? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mushi. I'm going to shoot your question over to Diplomat Taiwo. If you can hear us in 2 minutes, please, if you can take that question.
Sorry, please, can I have a brief of that question, please?
Yes. So Mushi was just asking about Agenda 2063 and whether it's a pipe dream. Is it achievable? And if yes, what can we do to achieve it?
Thank you very much. Yes, I can tell you that with what we have seen about the framework and about what has been put together regarding Agenda 2063, it is highly achievable. How it is achievable? If we can come together to cooperate, to collaborate, to organize ourselves, and to begin to use data. I can see that in everything that we've said, we've not talked much about data. And data is one area that Africa is really suffering from. Now, I also discovered during my own personal research about Agenda 2063 that the youth of African continent, we have got a whole lot of responsibility to do regarding Agenda 2063 for it to be successful. It's not just about our leaders. There is something I notice in Africa. I notice that our youth, we are very abusive. We are not just abusive, we condemned our leaders, we condemn things that we are supposed to come together to use as a symbol of progress. I discovered that the youth, if we can actually come together, we can be the technical machine to help Agenda 2063 to become a success. There is something I said during one of the African Union conference, where I was also a panelist. And I said that if we can begin to drive home some of this agenda and beginning to use our youth as a symbol of innovation, I tell you, in no time, we should be achieving this. Somebody talks about corruption. I notice that we are easily to point fingers with the youth. But have you checked yourself? If you are given opportunity, how fair, how prudent, how original can you be to live an upright life and not to go in that negative way, to divorce yourself into corruption? One of the major problems that can be a blocking stone to us achieving Agenda 2063 as mentioned by other people is corruption. We the youth, let us turn from our negative, evil vices way and embrace true innovation. Let us be original. Let us use AI ethically, okay, to support the progress of Agenda 2063. And by so doing that, we are on our way to achieving success and build one Africa. I hope I've been able to answer this in my own little way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diplomat Taiwo. I think now that we've run over time, kindly allow me to hand the program over back to Wangoi to close the program for us. Wangoi, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Sarabel, and also great thanks to our panelists. That session was indeed enlightening and knowledgeable. Too bad we only had 1 hour 30 minutes, but as you said, it's a discussion that cannot be exhausted in 1 hour 30 minutes, not even in a day. But for the 1 hour, I believe we did great. So I'll give Brian to proceed to give us a vote of thanks to everyone who attended and our panelists for their great work. So Brian, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Wangoi. Good evening, everyone. Good morning. Thank you very much for attending. Distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, colleagues, and participants. As we conclude this enriching session, it's my great honor to extend our full appreciation to everyone who made today's webinar success. First and foremost, take this opportunity to thank our speakers, Madam Stevonai, Madam Brenda, and Diplomat Taiwo. Thank you for sharing us invaluable expertise and thought-provoking perspective on the role of power, diplomacy, and compromise in addressing xenophobia. To our esteemed gracious host, Madam Sarabel, thank you for giving us an outstanding moderation and for guiding us today's today's session. Then also I will not forget about other participants and from different parts of the world. Your presence, engagement, and commitment is very meaningful to our dialogue. In regard to that, maybe for the Amalgam Nation, demonstrating that building a more inclusive and peaceful world is shared responsibility is one of the vital things. In finality, appreciation goes to the Global Bridge Diplomacy team and everyone who worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this event possible. Thank you very much, everyone. I know the information was very important for you, and also you may be able to ignite that light and spreading the gospel of the unity and the Pan-Africanism all over the African continent. Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Ngwe.
Hello everyone, it seems Ms. Ongwe is maybe having a challenge with her network, but thank you all for joining. Be sure to join us in our next webinar, which will be, we'll send out the invitations and also the concept notes for the next webinar to your emails. Also be expectant of the webinar report and the recording that will be also sent in the course of the week. So thank you very much for joining, and ensure that you follow us on our WhatsApp channel and also on our social media pages at Global Bridge Diplomacy. Thank you and have a lovely evening. So I'll kindly request that the GBD members remain and also our panelists for just some few minutes as the rest feel free to leave the meeting. Thank you for joining. Okay, it seems also some of the panelists have left, but that's okay. So I'll reach out to you, Miss Brenda, later on, and also we'll chat more with the GBD members on the wall. Okay, so have a lovely evening, and may God bless you. Good night.
Good night.